ما يمس المواطن، تطوير المرافق، الخدمات الأساسية للمواطنين والمقيمين، وتطوير البيئة التعليمية، ودعم خطط الإسكان. ووجه سموه بتوجيه واضح أن تستمر الحكومة في متابعة مستجدات الأوضاع الصحية والاقتصادية محليا ودوليا، وتوفير المخصصات للقطاع الصحي ليتمكن من مواجهة الجائحة ولنتفادى اتخاذ أي إجراءات احترازية إضافية. أيضا تابعنا كلمة سمو ولي العهد الوافية والشاملة بتعليق سموه على الإعلان الميزانية. تضمنت كلمة صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير محمد بن سلمان نقاط واضحة جدا فيما يتعلق باقتصاد المملكة ومالية المملكة والاستدامة المالية. من أهم ما تطرق لسموه هذا اليوم في كلمته بعد إعلان الميزانية هو الاستمرار في تحقيق المنجزات والمستهدفات وفق توجيهات خادم الحرمين الشريفين، التزام الحكومة بحجم الإنفاق المخطط له على المدى المتوسط وفق ما سبق إعلانه، وهذه مهمة جدا. التركيز لدى الحكومة هو الاستدامة المالية، أن نكون واضحين جدا في سقوف الإنفاق ونلتزم بها أيا كانت الإيرادات وأيا كان وضع السوق، لنمكن القطاع الخاص، لنمكن المواطنين من معرفة التوجه المستقبلي على المدى المتوسط. أيضا كان التركيز من سموه على استكمال العمل في تطوير عملية التخطيط المالي ورفع كفاءة الإنفاق والحفاظ على الاستدامة المالية. ركز سموه أيضا على أهمية استخدام الموارد المتاحة بما يحقق أفضل عائد منها، وتحدث سموه عن السياسة المالية التي اتبعتها الحكومة واستطاعت من خلالها السيطرة على العجز في الميزانية مع المحافظة على تحقيق مستهدفات رؤية المملكة 2030. وذكر سموه أن الفوائد سيتم عند تحققها سيتم استخدامها لتعزيز الاحتياطيات لنتمكن بإذن الله تعالى من مواجهة ما تبقى من الجائحة وتقوية المركز المالي للحكومة ورفع قدرتنا على التصدي لأي أزمات عالمية في المستقبل لا قدر الله. تحدث سموه أيضا عن الإنجازات المتتالية التي تحققت وفق الاستراتيجيات والبرامج التي أطلقتها الحكومة والمعلن عنها مسبقا. تحدث سموه أيضا عن دور المواطن المحوري في تحقيق التنمية الاقتصادية وزيادة تمكين المرأة التي تمثل مشاركتها قوة إيجابية للمجتمع. تحدث سموه أيضا عن التأكيد على أهمية دور القطاع الخاص كشريك محوري ورئيسي وحيوي في التنمية، وأن الاستراتيجية الوطنية للاستثمار تستهدف تمكين القطاع الخاص للمشاركة في الفرص الواعدة المدعومة من الحكومة، حيث سيبلغ الإنفاق وفق الاستراتيجية 12 تريليون ريال حتى العام 2030، شاملة ما تم الإعلان عنه من سموه 5 تريليون تحت برنامج شريك، 3 تريليون ريال تحت برنامج صندوق الاستثمارات العامة، 4 تريليون من الاستثمارات من القطاع الخاص المحلي والدولي، إضافة بالتأكيد إلى الإنفاق الحكومي للعشر سنوات القادمة بحدود 10 تريليون، والاستهلاك الخاص بما يزيد عن 5 تريليون، بحيث يكون الإجمالي تقريبا ما سينفق في المملكة خلال العشر سنوات القادمة 27 تريليون ريال. أيضا تحدث سموه عن تحقيق ما يتطلع إلى أهمية وركز عليها سموه، وتحقيق ما يتطلع إليه المواطن من تحسين ورفع جودة الخدمات وتحسين فرص الاستثمار وزيادة فرص التوظيف. تحدث سموه في البيان عن ما تم إنجازه من جهود مشتركة بين الحكومة والقطاع الخاص لخفض مستوى البطالة إلى 11.3، ولا زلنا نستهدف بإذن الله تعالى في عام 2030 تحقيق المستهدف المعلن عنه 7% بإذن الله وأقل. كما تحدث سموه بالتأكيد عن دور المملكة الريادي في استقرار الطاقة وأسواقها وقيادة الحقبة الخضراء القادمة. في ما يتعلق بالميزانية، وكما سمعنا في إعلان الميزانية قبل قليل، قبل التحدث عن الأرقام أعتقد أن المهم جدا التحدث عن الركائز الأساسية خلف الميزانية. الركائز 3 تقريبا، وهي ضمان الاستدامة المالية العامة من خلال تنويع مصادر الإيرادات ورفع كفاءة الإنفاق، وهذه ستكون سياسة على المدى المتوسط والطويل نتأكد فيها من استقرار المالية العامة، قدرتها على مواجهة الأزمات، عدم المسايرة التذبذبات في الإيرادات، التأكد من أن ضبط الإنفاق الحكومي والصرف في مجالات تحقق أكبر عائد منها. الركيزة الثانية هي تمكين القطاع الخاص، وتحدث سموه كما ذكرت قبل قليل عن الدور الفاعل والمحوري للقطاع الخاص. سيستمر جهود الحكومة وتستمر جهود الحكومة بإذن الله تعالى في تمكين القطاع الخاص، سواء من خلال الاستراتيجية الوطنية للاستثمار التي يعلن عنها والتي سيقودها بإذن الله القطاع الخاص بتمكين ودعم وتحفيز من الحكومة، ولكن أيضا هناك عدة أجنحة ستدعم القطاع الخاص، منها صندوق التنمية الوطني وما يقوم فيه من جهود لتوحيد وتركيز استراتيجيات الصناديق والبنوك التابعة له لتحقيق أعلى عائد وتوفير التمويل للقطاع الخاص، وأيضا جهود صندوق الاستثمارات العامة في تمكين القطاع الخاص وجلب مزيد من الاستثمارات مع الصندوق من القطاع الخاص. الركيزة الثالثة هي التحولات الهيكلية المستمرة من خلال برامج تحقيق رؤية المملكة 2030، بما في ذلك برنامج التحول الوطني، برنامج خدمة ضيوف الرحمن، برنامج تطوير القطاع المالي، برنامج التخصيص، وغيرها من البرامج المهمة اللي من المتأمل والآن بدأنا نشهد آثارها أن تحدث نقلة هيكلية في الاقتصاد، ما يعود على الوطن والمواطن بالخير بإذن الله تعالى. فيما يتعلق بأبرز المؤشرات المالية في الميزانية العامة للدولة للعام المالي القادم 2022، كما سمعنا قبل قليل الإيرادات من المتوقع أن تكون في حدود تريليون 45 مليار. النفقات كما أعلن عنها سابقا وكما ذكر سمو ولي العهد صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير محمد بن سلمان
clearly said that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the government is highly committed to what has been, of course, announced, particularly when it comes to the medium term. It will be 955 billion, of course, riyals, and will be expected up to 90 billion Saudi riyals. Out of this, of course, out of the 955 for the broad pillars, and as for the administrative, of course, Ministry of Interior, as for the military sector, including Ministry of Defense, Intelligence, the National Guards, along with other military, 171 billion, of course. As for the economic sectors, 54 billions. The healthcare sector and national development, social development, 140, economy, education, 140 billions. As for the basic transportation, logistics, 42 billions. Of course, we see much focus, of course, relating to the importance and interest of citizens, particularly education and healthcare, and also the municipal, of course, which focuses or which takes up at about 42% of the budget. As for the financial indicators on the medium term, there are 2 points that I need to refer to as a restructuring or remapping our own expectations of the revenues, and also updating the ceiling. Of course, the financial sustainability program is working to develop a plan, a crystal clear plan, in order to identify the ceiling of expenditure away from the, of course, the expectation of revenues, based on it, on which, of course, as we see in front of us, the structural revenues that will be, of course, will be used to identify the ceilings. 942 and 962 billions for the 2023 and 2024. To be very much transparent, of course, it will be 942 billions up to 952. Of course, as for the surplus, we will 2023, 2024. I announce again and again and emphasize again and again that these expectations are relating to the revenues and are not based on our readings of the future, but also based on the structural revenues that we are based, of course, on, and we will announce at the end of the at the end of the 2022, of course, our own expectations for the actual finance, hopefully. As for the scenarios of revenues, we have not yet been out of the COVID-19 pandemic, so consequently, the Financial Committee, led by His Royal Highness Crown Prince, a lot of groups, a lot of scenarios, a lot of things that are different to be more prepared, well prepared to overcome any crises, global crises, God forbid. Of course, most of the think tanks expect that the global economy will be recovered, even though we have different challenges. Of course, most of the think tanks expect that there will be a kind of a recession of the demand and consumption for the goods and other services or products at the same time. However, there are so many challenges that facing the world, not just the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whether as for the COVID-19 and the new mutations as we see here, there, and there are like partial or total lockdown across the world. The second point is the challenges of the supply chain in terms of the inflation, so that will play such economic impact and financial impact, and also in this case, of course, the cost will be higher on the economy in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So we have 4 scenarios for the revenues in 2022. The structural revenues that we use to build the ceiling, which has been announced previously in the preliminary declaration, and the basic revenues scenario, one scenario that is based on something that is reasonable for 2022, which has been announced, of course, in 2042, and there are less expectations and reserve, taking into consideration the threats and the possibility of threats that I have talked about, and we expect, of course, revenues about 991 and other interactive or active in terms of like the economy increase and the more control, of course, on the COVID-19, that may up to 1,143 billion. As for the expectations for the motivations of economy in the medium term, including next year, of course, and 2023 and 2024, there is a group of factors that are motivating. I'll start with the economy factors. We expect that this year, of course, we expect to be expected to be higher in terms of, while the total, the non-oil, of course, as for us, of course, what is important in the government is to follow up the non-oil total budget, total production is very important. Our own successful plans and strategies. As for, we expect the local production expected to be 3 trillions or plus in 2023, and we expect it to be for the local non-oil local productions 5% for the upcoming 3 years. We hope also that this will be more and more along with other initiatives to be realized. As for the movements of growth and development, exactly, we expect to see a development in implementing the Vision 2030 programs and initiatives. We expect we expect the immunity to be higher and higher than what we have actually. Why? Because the close cooperation with the citizens to take the third boost. Of course, vaccine is to avoid, the COVID-19 pandemic to get out of track, because so we don't want to take any extra procedures and measures. We do expect, we do trust, and we have high confidence in the citizens, and also we have great efforts, of course, by the government. And I hope everyone, of course, to take the precautionary procedures also as announced by the Ministry of Health. And I'm speaking here about this year. It is promising, it is bright. At the end, of course, at the end of the fourth quarter, it was the growth of the local production was about 5.5. The non-oil, of course, one supported by the growth and development of the private sector, which is 7%, which is a high percentage, which also enhances the trust and confidence of the private sector when it comes to the economic reforms headed by the custodian of the Hamas government. Of course, as for the consumption indicators recorded as announced, of course, up until the end of October, an increase of more than 35% in terms of the sale, and both in the electronic commerce, which means that the consumption level is getting higher and increasingly growing. And also the level of employment and job creations is higher and higher. As for the consumption index and also the trust of investors in economy, PMI, is increased up to 57, which is 13% in comparison with last year. And also the increase of the government to support the medium and small and medium-sized enterprises through the establishment of the bank, which has come, of course, under the recommendations of the Crown Prince, approved by the Custodian Mosque. The bank will get started, of course, to support the small and medium-sized enterprises when it comes also to the job creation and job employment will start like in 2022. Also, we have different programs that support the small and medium-sized enterprises, such as Kafala and other funds that support entrepreneurs. Equally important as for enabling the private sector, we've seen the high increase of investments in the private sector, 7% supported by the programs and strategies launched by the government. In addition, of course, ADLIB and also the support of the national industry and logistics, also by the launched by the Crown Prince, the program of the support of the transportation or transport and the logistics, which provide great support for the private sector, and we will see more and more growth and development in the medium term based on this. And as a result of this, and also talked about the national strategy of investment. I don't want to repeat it, but it is very important given the unified vision of the investment over the upcoming 10 years. And also Sharik program also targets to make the private sector to take it from the investments that are traditional to be more viable, more vivid over more than like 10-year time, supported by motivations by Sharik program. We expect, of course, the investments to be through Sharik program to be 5 trillion. That, of course, provide different opportunities for the private sector, in addition to 3 trillion by the PIF, and also 4 trillion by the private sector. Also, the government expenditure 10 trillion, and the special, of course, expenditure is 10 trillion. Also, the Crown Prince announced this year, of course, the development of what is known as legislation that has been updated for the private sector. Why? To make more justice, to make more transparency in terms of the legislation, also to make the private sector more peace of mind and insurance. We are working hard to enhance the tourism environment across the Kingdom of Serbia. We have launched, of course, the strategy of tourism, and we expect to have more tourism, so that tourism come into play across the Kingdom of Serbia, to have more economic growth and development, and also enhance more job opportunities for the male and female citizens. We have a lot of efforts are being made. We have seen different seasons across the Kingdom of Serbia, some of which have been launched and some of which also will be launched later in 2022, of course, which support the quality of life, or the life quality, the job opportunities, economy, the local economy, and also increase the oil production based on the OPEC agreement, which of course support the growth of the economy. We do expect that the economy to grow up to 2022, of course, up to 7.4%, supported by the increase of oil production, also supported by the local production that is non-oil, which of course will grow and develop 5% hopefully. Before I open the floor to the questions, if you allow me, there are certain points I'd like to focus more on. First, in such a great event or meeting, it's once a year, for the budget of the Kingdom of Saudi, I'd like to express my appreciation the soldiers, the security men who stay day and night, who sacrifice their lives. Why? To enjoy our life normally, without any kind of headache, without kind of pain. So great appreciation, gratitude go to all of them. Equally important, I will be also more passionate to feel the power of our own soldiers inside and at the borders of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to protect the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. His Royal Highness Crown Prince also emphasized, and also I'd like to emphasize and reiterate his keynote speech, citizens are the key factors of the development and the growth. Citizens are the most important thing. Citizens are the bedrock of what we do, because we depend, after Allah, we depend on the citizens of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, of what has been planned. The government is following up closely, and have been asked over the recent days about our own plans relating to the budget, taking into consideration the big transformation and reformations given of COVID-19. The government is working closely on the local, regional and international level, and we have such a great trust and confidence in the health sector. Of course, they have such a great proficiency, competency, of course, and also this has been witnessed by the world, across the world, of course. They have, of course, efficiently addressed all the crises here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They have such a great efficiency and ability to overcome any crisis. The custodian of Tuhal Mosque directed, of course, clearly when it comes to the announcement of the budget that we need to allocate what is required and needed by the health sector for this COVID-19 pandemic. Also, I'd like to draw your attention. Tomorrow we will have the forum of the budget, of course, and the other day, of course, we will also have different ministers to speak more about what has been achieved this year, where we spend, of course, the budget, and what has been achieved for the citizens and the economy. They will be further speaking about our own objectives and targets in 2022. Of course, each minister will speak for the respective and relevant sector. And also, I'm calling you here, inviting you all to attend the forum over the upcoming 2 days. Thank you ever so much. And now I'm opening the floor to more questions. We have one microphone, and I don't want to delay it, so I would like to pick 2 to 3 right and left, so that they go to the microphone, introduce themselves, and also answer the question. I'll start from the right, please. Go ahead. After. Yes, please. Go ahead. Hello, Ali Al-Sharif, Sky News Arabic. My question to Your Excellency, at the beginning, I would like to congratulate you on the announcement of the budget, and also the realization of such a great figures and numbers and achievements. Of course, what is the priority of the budget, and what is the impact of the citizens directly? The second point is, the private sector is one of the success partners in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and one of the targets of 2030 vision. Sharik program, what is it that will achieve for the citizens, and what is the impact that is expected over the upcoming years? Thank you so much. Thank you. The priority of the budget, I just spoke about this. As for providing services for the citizens, rest assured that we provide always services for the citizens at a high quality. We always keep improving such services. That is why 43% will go to like different things such as education, healthcare, and municipal services. As for supporting the private sector employs, of course, Saudis, and it is all mostly owned by Saudis, and it has such a great investment opportunity for Saudi. It is very important, of course, for us to support the private sector, to be motivated by the private sector. Sharik program is a very important program, of course. We're speaking through it, of course, with the different companies, those willing, of course, to engage in this program. What is it that we provide to be motivated, of course, to increase investment opportunities, and not just like at the medium term, as the private sector used to work through. No, will be furthermore. We also target not just like the economic growth and development, and increase the economic development and the growth, but also we aim to create more job opportunities, hopefully. Please go ahead. And then after you, please. Hello, Musa from Murtana. My question is to you, Your Excellency. How much is the due payments that have been paid, of course, to the private sector in 2021? Thank you. This is a very good question. Thank you so much. As for the private sector, it was like 220 billion Saudi riyals as of course, the government procurement, of course, system. It is very important as it's stimulated or provided we have to pay the private sector in 45 days, supporting the private sector when the COVID-19, of course, the 97% of this amount of money were paid, of course, just some money, of course, some payment were paid later, but 97% were paid, of course, within less than 15 days. Please, I hope. From Al Arabiya, most of the private sector institutions, of course, suffer from the high increase and of course, the cost and fees of the government. You talked about the private sector support, how it will contribute to solve this kind of problem. We always support the private sector. In COVID-19 pandemic, of course, the government, of course, provide different initiatives up to 238, of course, whether like in terms of supporting payment and also exemption, such as, for example, air flights or flights and travel agencies, and also tourism. The other efforts, of course, have been provided, such as, for example, the renewing residence permits, work permits, and also like we always support the private sector. Different procedures are being taken. The Ministry of the Human Resources, of course, just recently to reconsider, of course, in terms of cost and fees, even though like violations, they show that they will deal with these issues more interactively, to give them like warning or previous warning or notice, like to reduce some violations. As for the Ministry of Commerce, they announced very clearly just weeks ago to study different, of course, procedures and measures to ensure that we will not make it a burden on the private sector. Please go ahead. Good evening, Your Excellency. We have today the files of job opportunities, housing, healthcare, education, are indicators, of course, for the efforts of the government to support this. If we speak about 2022, will the government, of course, keep supporting these files because they are very important, such as housing, healthcare, and education? I don't want to answer, but if you attend the forum, Their Excellencies, Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Education, Healthcare, and or health, they will speak about this, but rest assured that the government in 2022 and beyond will also continue supporting these files or these issues strongly, efficiently, even more. With like the figures will be announced by the Ministry of Mumra, specific figures, how many people or have been accommodated or have benefited from the housing because of the support of the housing, in addition to the sector of health and transportation, information technology. Please go ahead, and then okay. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Mohammed Al-Bishi, Al-Sharq newspaper. Your Excellency, we have heard, of course, a lot of development growth in the investment, of course, for the 2030 vision. Of course, investment made great leaps and quantum leaps, of course, and also the number of factories from 5 or 7,000 factories up to 10,000 factories. We noticed and we felt that some kind of worry or uneasiness in terms of like the customs and the zakah and income, of course, started to see this kind of retroactive effect for the people working in this. Thank you so much. And this is a very important question, and it is a sensitive point. We are studying this, of course, closely, but to make it clear, the authority of zakah, customs and income, of course, applying the law. The policy comes from the government. And we want to ensure that to make it, of course, should be based on the law or the system based on the statutory procedures and governed by those, of course, the rights and duties of to be like file a complaint or file an objection, whether this authority or the other authority. It is the right of the citizens to file a complaint, just to ensure also to make it clear as for the point for the zakah and income. Most of the tax and income, of course, gives the authority to go back 5 years to review the decisions. Why? Because statements are provided by thousands of people, thousands of companies, and if the authority, for example, wants to review the statement, so it will stop the institution. Most of the statements will be accepted as is because this is based on trust and confidence. In certain cases, the authority needs to review some statements where certain things will be found or identified, some violations will be identified, whether intentionally or unintentionally, whether like deceptively or undeceptively, because such people who made like these statements probably deceptively. So it has the right, of course, to go back 5 years. As for the period of time for the authority of zakah and income and other international ones, if you look into different ones, if you look into the media, you will find so many cases where it goes back more than 5 years, what is known as tax evasion, where the statements, of course, have not been, tax statements have been submitted. So those who have not submitted the results or the tax statements is to evade and not a mistake. The mistake, of course, cannot get back to 5 years. But if it is approved that it is tax evasion, the authority will go back to more than 5 years. Please go ahead and then get back to you. Hello, the SAPA, Majid Al-Fadani from SAPA. How will the budget, of course, to create more job opportunities and reduce unemployment? Thank you. This is a very important question. His Royal Highness Crown Prince spoke about the press conference today about this, of course, and we have seen different government efforts, of course, in COVID-19 pandemic, of course, also reduced the unemployment by the government efforts for the private sector employees to reduce the time of getting out. We have seen a good business recovery this year. This has been reduced based on, of course, the unemployment. Unemployment reduced or was reduced. We spoke about the support of the economic sector and the investment and the national strategy of investment, the purpose of which, of course, is strategies to support the economic growth and development. It means that we will have more factories, we'll have more institutions, more companies, more services, and the companies will provide more and more. These kind of increases, of course, means simply that more male and female citizens will be employed. So 2030 target will, of course, be or reach up to 7% of the unemployment. Please go ahead. It is almost there. I will take one more question. And I'll take your question and the other one. Hello, Your Excellency. I'd like to congratulate you on the announcement of this budget and these figures. I hope you always a successful budget. My question is to you, is also related to the private sector. We have noticed over the recent period of time much development and growth for the private sector, but still so many great private sector institutions are still impacted. What are the solutions that can be added? What are the solutions that can be added over the coming period of time, of course, by the government to reduce the burdens, particularly when it comes to the small and medium-sized enterprises? We have the financial sustainability. We have looked and considered into the cost of economy, including the cost that you have talked about. And we have also reconsidered because we don't want to always target the non-oil revenues. We also would like to target the increase of development and growth, because economy increases, profits increase, so tax and income increase higher and higher. So we don't target only, we target the growth and development, so the economy will be better, and also the government will be successfully able to create more opportunity and more job opportunities and employment, or relating to reducing the burdens on citizens. I hope and wish always to see more improvements. A lot of initiatives have been announced by the government entities and authorities, and we see more and more to mitigate and reduce, of course, the burdens on the private sector institution. Also, I believe that the private sector also is invited and called to enhance its own competency and efficiency. So, but again, it is appropriate, of course, to look into these agencies, to look into these private sector institutions to enhance the competency efficiency. Equally important, in the government, we will increase also the competency and efficiency of the government to reduce, of course, the expenditure also, or the cost. Of course, the budget of 2022 is a surplus of 90 billion. As for the expenditure, 955. So the surplus is 90 billion. As for the deficiency is 85 billions, much less than what has been announced, and much than what has been announced. The deficiency in 2020. I would like to conclude one final question. I promised him one final question. Please go ahead. Muhammad bin Saad, Al-Ikhbariya News TV channel. Let me just ask you this question. What is more controversial, what is very important for the citizens, in light of the announcement of this surplus, big surplus of money, and this great budget within the economic crisis across the world, will the VAT be reduced, and also will some commodities and goods be supported financially in 2022? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this question. We talked about this one, and I have just talked about this previously, and we talked about this last year, and I just said also that the general trend or orientation is to reconsider and relook also into the tax when things are better, economy is better, and to remind you the deficiency that have taken place in 2020, 255 billions, and later, of course, 85 billions. So when, of course, we have a surplus in 1 year that will not cover the deficiencies and the debts, of course, and the financial withdrawals to cover the, of course, the deficiency in the budget to provide services. But again, I repeat again, we will reconsider in the VAT tax. For the time being, the surplus are very important to use to support the reserve, the financial reserve. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is still lurking behind somewhere. We wish always to ensure that the financial center of the government will be able always to overcome any kind of crisis in the future. This is a policy that is very important to follow to avoid taking any procedures that are very difficult when we don't have the ability, of course, to absorb of course, the shocks or the crises, as is the case that we have seen over the last year. Thank you ever so much. Your attention is highly appreciated, and I'm quite sorry for those who I have not taken their question. Your attention is highly appreciated. I wish you attend the forum tomorrow and the other day to ask more questions. Thank you so much.